What up friends, Liron here. Today I want to show you how I painted this. What up friends, Liron here. Thank you for joining me in another video. So today I want to share with you the full drawing and painting process of this painting. You saw it, some of you, in the time-lapse video I published yesterday. I hope you enjoyed that and seeing the process. And today I just want to go over everything that I did here. One thing I was really pleased with is the drawing stage. I did make a few mistakes in terms of the perspective, the two-point perspective here. Not everything works out really as I wanted to, but the way I approached the drawing process, and you will see this in a few moments, I'm just really pleased with it. It's very loose. I kept things the way I wanted to. The one thing I would improve here is the composition, and I will talk a little bit more about it. It was a bit less well planned. The main building blocks, the buildings, the street, are placed well, but the people and the vehicles a little less, okay? So just this is the price you pay if you don't plan out properly. But anyway, this is it. I'm overall really pleased with this, so let's get going here. Okay, so I'm starting here with the drawing. By the way, you'll have to excuse me, I have this terrible allergy right now, and so my nose is a little blocked, my voice may be a little different, and I may have to sneeze during the narration or blow my nose, okay? So I'm starting by dividing the scene into the simplest major shapes, which are the buildings. And I start with the building on the left. It looked a little too much to the left for me, so I moved it a little to the right, just to give it some more significance. And now I'm going over these two sort of sets of buildings. You have the one in the center and the one between the one on the left and the one on the right. So what ended up happening, and this is 2 points perspective, is that I placed the building in the center too far to the left, not leaving enough room for the building on the right. And so what you will see me do soon is correct it and sort of move it to the right. You see, I didn't allow enough space here because I do want to allow some place for the details of the building on the left. So all of the lines I drew just now are converging to the right vanishing point, and all the lines on the left side converge to the left vanishing point, okay? This is something I may cover in more detail in another video. You can check out the video I did on perspective a while ago. Yeah, so now I'm starting to put in the details of the roof, and I can tell that I just don't have enough space. So I don't remember exactly when, but at some point I just moved that building in the center a little more to the right to leave a little more room there on the left. Now, as I'm trying to do this fairly loose, I don't worry too much about the details this time. So you see I just threw in the shapes of the roof on the left there, putting in the window, just trying to keep the details to the bare minimum. What often happens when I try to create a loose painting is that I end up making too loose of a drawing, or I don't put enough focus on it. So this is something I'm working on. I will try again in a short while to create another loose painting, but the next time I will make the drawing itself really tight and really ready to go. But anyway, yeah, now I figured I don't have enough room. Let's move this entire building finally to the right. So you can see I just moved this entire thing to the right here. I have a few mistakes in the perspective. Not all lines converge properly. The building on the left is a little leaning a bit, I think, and also the lines themselves don't really end up in the vanishing point. This is my bad. Should have probably mirrored it because it's a relatively complex scene. You know, I decided to sketch it and paint it very loosely, but the scene itself is still quite complex. So it could be good maybe to mirror it, just give it a little more attention. The funny thing is that if I would have drawn this with a pen directly, I would probably get a more accurate result, because I don't know, that's just how my brain works for some reason. When I have to put the lines there and it's permanent, I just get them to look good for some reason. When I know I'm slowly building things up, I tend to make more mistakes and then correct them, of course, because it's pencil, but still. So it's a very interesting observation. By the way, even if I'd wanted to use a pen here, I can't, because this is the Arch rough paper, not rough, sorry, the cold pressed paper, but it does have some tooth, some texture, much more significant than the Stonehenge cold pressed paper, by the way. So it's not really pen friendly. I find that with the papers that have more texture in them, they're not so good for pens because they scratch the tip of the pen. You can't really get a good line with them, and so yeah. So now I'm just dividing the buildings into sections based on the perspective here, because these sections will guide me later on where to put the windows and where to put the little architectural details, okay? So this is what I'm doing now. If you hear a weird noise in the background, that's me playing around with some toilet paper, tissue, whatever you want to call it. Yeah, it's annoying. This allergy is terrible. It's so weird because I didn't have anything in Paris, but as soon as I got back home, I started having this. I'm pretty sure I'm allergic to something here in Israel, or specifically in my home. But it's something I'm taking care of. And I'll probably move to a different place, by the way, really soon. I will keep you updated on it. I just was so busy with it that I didn't have time to update properly, but you will get an update. So anyway, now moving on to the tower of this building. Just one of the most beautiful parts, I think. It's not really the center of focus here or something like this, but it is a beautiful part that I really liked to work on. I like when there's this thin towers and they have these small windows that are basically slits. What you see now is real time. It's not time-lapse or anything. So I can build, we're like 6 minutes into the video, 7 minutes into the video, so I can build things up pretty quickly with the drawing part. It doesn't take me that long. With the painting part, you have a little less control because you have to actually wait for things to dry. So sometimes you're a bit limited. These small details I'm adding now, the windows on the roof, they're just beautiful. When you will see when I put the paint in, how they help convey the shape and the plays of light and shadows. Just a beautiful shape. So yeah, I'm really pleased with it. And also take into consideration there is a bit of skewing due to the camera angle. You see the paper's at an angle, about 20 degrees, maybe 25 degrees. And what happens is that if you just look at the sides of the paper, they're not parallel to the edges of the video, okay? So it often happens in videos like this. I hope to upgrade my gear and stuff so that it will allow for these kinds of things to be recorded dead straight on. Sometimes it's just not easy logistically, even with the best equipment, because you have to have the camera coming from the front and then it stands in your way when you paint. So sometimes it's hard to find an ideal solution for these kinds of things, but hopefully it doesn't detract too much from your understanding of the scene itself. So anyway, now I'm starting to put in those windows, starting with the most major one that I found, and then adding the ones to its side. I'm not necessarily that worried about making this as accurate. I do add these inner details, and I know a lot of people don't. They leave that for the brush, sorry. I think this is something I should try, actually, to reduce even more details and try to really let the brush do most of the work. It could be interesting. Really, even when I'm saying this is a loose one, I still use quite a lot of pencil lines. I like things to be accurate, but you don't necessarily have to put in all those details. If you're good with the brush and you know what you're doing and you carefully observe the reference while you paint. I see a lot of really, really advanced watercolor artists. They leave the drawing really bare, and then they do all of this with the brush. For me, it's a little harder, but I think it's just a matter of practice. So I don't necessarily think it's harder, technically speaking. I just think it's different. It's a different mindset that maybe I still don't have. So I'll probably work on that. Now we see how the composition of the buildings, I think, comes together really nicely. The thing that bugged me a little, and you'll see soon, is the cars and where I place the people, and I got feedback on it, and I knew that I will get these comments that the people are on the edge of the scene, and yeah, it's my bad. I should have probably given a little more thought to where I place them. But anyway, yeah, this now really is close to all the details the buildings need. Trying not to overdo it, even though I mentioned I already overdid it in terms of what I wanted to experiment with in the future. But for this one, it was okay. So yeah, the building in the front is really just, I'm just throwing it in there. It's gonna be out of focus. It's not going to be really central or something. So yeah, just gonna be there, and I don't want it to take too much of the focus. Actually, I want it to kind of blur out there, so you'll see what I do later on with the watercolor that will help sort of blend it in to the left side of the image. So now there's a bit of bushes, and then this tree and the edge, getting them in. I already figured out the color scheme I want to use. What I thought about was using French ultramarine as the blue, and then use this combination of new gamboge and quinacridone burnt orange to get the roofs to look more well lit. I'm gonna exaggerate a bit the lighting conditions, just a bit, not too much, because it's not as vibrant in the reference. So I wanted to make it just a little more interesting. And then I'm gonna use the undersea green for the foliage, and it's just a good combination, because if you put quinacridone burnt orange in there, so I know I can put the undersea, because they came in the same primary set and they work together quite nicely. And then the French ultramarine usually works with these kind of colors because they contain them. They contain it. Some of them, I believe. Some of the secondaries in the secondary set. And what else am I putting in here? Some green, some sap green for the traffic lights, some things like this. Burnt sienna, and just to mute out some of the blues to make those roofs of the larger buildings. So now I'm putting in the cars. Now the cars on the left are okay, I would say. My problems with the car in the dead center of the scene. It's just stuck in there, and you can't see all of it. Ideally, what I should be doing is drawing it a little more forward on the street, on the same street, just to the right, so that you can actually see all of it, and it just doesn't feel like it's stuck there in the middle of the buildings. And this will allow me maybe to cast some more shadows on the street itself, just to define its shape better, which is an advice I got, I don't remember where, maybe on wet canvas, the form, watercolor form. So I think this could be a good idea. Yeah, a lot of things I learned from this one. Here's an example. So I said that sometimes from successes you don't learn anything, but in this example I did learn quite a lot from this. I consider it a success, but I learned a lot from it. The road turned out a little too even. Should have probably put a little more shadows, as I mentioned, just to define its shape. The composition could have been better. The people, should have moved them somewhere. So it's funny, it is a success, but I learned a lot from it. So yeah, if I would have gotten this result maybe 3 or 4 or 6 months ago, I would be completely blown away. I would probably think to myself, wow, that's amazing. I reached my, that's it. I mastered the medium or something weird like this. It's funny, every time you think you really nailed something, then you improve and you see how much more you can achieve. It's not even about comparing to other people. And then you're like, okay, there's a lot more to learn. So anyway, now I'm putting in that traffic light. It will be a nice way to bring something to the front. It's going to be starkly darker than the rest of the scene. But yeah, about that thing with, you never know how much more you can improve. It's amazing. Even when you think you got to something that really is remarkable, and maybe you have, you always find out that you can take it one step forward. And that's, I think, what's so fascinating about art and creativity and all of that, because there's no upper limits if you continue applying yourself. Really, there's none. So You can always, for example, get the same effect with less details. Hint the exact same thing, suggest the exact same amount of information, but with half the details, which is amazing. You know, sometimes I see people's really masters of the medium. You see their drawings, and it's like there's nothing there. And they just know what to do with it, and they just know how to place everything. So right now, my attempts to make my work a little more loose, a little less tight and stuffy, really take me in that direction of understanding what I can leave out. And I constantly learn that I keep stuffing too much things in there that aren't necessarily necessary, that I don't always really need to do it successfully. So anyway, that's it for the drawing, and now I'm starting to mix the blue for the sky. And as a lesson from one of my previous paintings, I decided to really vary the sky, make it a little more interesting, and not make them completely flat, because with loose paintings, there's so much more potential to get it too flat. So I put some paint, then I put a lot of water on the brush, and I just let it blend together. Now I'm adding some magenta. This was French ultramarine, adding some magenta to some places to create some more interest. I'm not sure if I'll add some spray in here. No, I don't think I'll add some spray. But anyway, yeah, just blending it a bit to create these changes. Now I came back with a bit of a drier brush to pick up some of the paint. Pick it up. I'm picking it up next to the edges now. You see, just coming with a dry brush and going over it. I could have covered the entire page, but I didn't see a reason to do so. I just preferred to have it really loose and end somewhere around where the buildings begin. Okay. So now I'm trying to just blend some of those strong highlights here, but I don't want to overdo it, and it looks good in the overall scheme of things, and so I just try to not mess with it too much, okay? Because at this point it's kind of okay. Again, just blending in some of the edges here. The reason I blend them in is because I don't want to have stark lines showing through under the buildings or something like this, which is very unlikely because they're going to be significantly darker, but anyway. So now I'm mixing some French ultramarine with burnt sienna. The burnt sienna neutralizes it and adds this effect of just darkening it. Now my goal with this wash is, and as you can see in the reference, the roofs, even their bright parts or light parts, are darker significantly than the sky. So my goal is basically to cover all of the buildings with this wash without regarding too much of the details. Maybe I'll leave really few highlights, but my goal here is to really go over all of them. And so you see I'm trying to unify the two buildings into one wash soon. This is a bit of I hope it's not boring. It's just me working around the roof, trying to get its shape properly. I got a bit lucky here because I was able to get the shape to look good. Sometimes you mess up with the brush even a little bit, and it can destroy the effect. You need to make sure to not leave weird wonky lines. So I think this is where drawing experience becomes really helpful, because it translates to your brush skills. So when you're, in fact, even if you're okay at drawing, just the act of practicing drawing improves your watercolors. You don't necessarily have to practice with a brush to improve in watercolors. You can practice with a pencil as well. The grip is very similar. The behavior is a little different, of course, of the medium, but aside from that, you get two very similar effects. So yeah, I'm really struggling with my nose right now. It's annoying me. It's like tickles, and then I wanna sneeze or I wanna blow it, and yeah. Anyway, I added some burnt sienna there just to warm things up a little as we go down the wash. I find that in many of these cases you can kind of make the wash almost even lighter the more you go down, because the upper parts where it meets the sky are the most critical. So it creates a very nice effect, especially if the sky is well lit, because then you darken it close to the source light, creating a stronger contrast. Anyway, now I mixed some quinacridone burnt orange with a little bit of new gamboge, I believe, or maybe even some burnt sienna in there, just maybe leftovers, and I'm going over all the right side of the buildings. My goal here is to get an initial wash that shows the difference in color, but not necessarily the difference in values, because the left sides of the buildings are much darker, and you can't always get this level of darkness with just one wash. It's up to the glazing to some extent. Okay, so many times what I try to do with the initial wash, or what some people call underpainting, is really what it's meant to do. Just get a very even wash that shows the difference in colors. And now you'll see when I connect it to the orange, and hopefully the wash is still wet and it connects properly. Okay, because it's a bit of a tricky shape to color, to paint in without losing the wetness of the wash. But you see I managed to do that here. Now the thing is, I don't want to move to the left, because that'll split my wash into two parts, the part to the right of the car and the part to the left. So I keep the part on the left not colored for now. And then I'm moving on using some undersea green for the foliage, as I mentioned. I'll let it all blend together for this initial wash. I'll later on come back and add some more darker washes. You'll see soon, but for now I just let it all blend together, trying to keep an accurate line there at the bottom. Could have probably added some highlights for these bushes, low-hanging bushes. I didn't think about it at the time. But anyway, now I'm going back to the original wash of the burnt sienna and French ultramarine, trying to make it not too dark, so I'm adding just a bit of water to it. And now I'm continuing that wash I just finished with the green, all the way across to the street, and again not touching the left side, the part that's left to the car. Because I don't want to split my efforts now. Because if I start painting it there, I need to worry about it drying there. So I preferred to just take the risk of having an initial wash that's not 100% even, or just a little fragmented, just to keep the integrity of both parts, if that makes any sense. And you'll later on see how it actually works out okay in this specific thing. What I'm less pleased here is the way the people turned out. I don't know why. When I draw them, just people individually, they turn out really cool. When I put them into a scene, it's like I just lose some of my focus in painting them, and the result isn't as good. Probably I think it's just a matter of awareness and putting more focus on it. Just some more willpower, I guess. These things really affect the result. So anyway, now I'm mixing in a very similar color to the building on the right. I'm just doing the same thing, trying to place my hand in a place that, in a location on paper that won't smear the previous, the previous wash, because it's still significantly, sorry about that, sound like a horse probably, because it's still significantly wet. So, or maybe I waited for it to dry. I'm not really sure. I think it's still wet. Yeah. So this one's a little more blue, a little less burnt sienna in there, and the reason why is because it's more in the distance. So it's a little more muted, even the orange I'm using is a little more toned down by the blue. I just didn't mix a new batch that's more pure, like the building on the front, because it's actually the effect I wanted. I want it to be like this. Now you see where this wash meets the wash on the right, and the wash on the right is already dry. I need to be really careful not to make it too fragmented in a weird way. Just added some detail there to the building. But yeah, I need to be careful not to fragment it and make it go over the previous wash too much. Lucky for me, this area of the building will be darker, the area on the right of that wash I'm working on. And so it will cover up this mistake. So now I'm just putting in the shape of the roof, just really trying, this is the loose part really. This is where I succeeded with it. Just putting in that shape, not really filling up the details, but rather drawing them with the brush, making sure I touch that previous wash while it's still wet. Now my efforts are a bit split. I have this area I'm working on right now, and the area in the middle that I want to continue moving down with to the street. So I need to work a little fast and make sure I don't mess up any of those. So now I'm finishing wrapping up this part on the left, adding some more color and some more water to the wash to lighten it up a bit. And then I'm moving all over the cars, because the left sides of the cars are also fairly darker. So I just want to get that in there together with this wash. Remember, if you can merge washes, it's always better because it leads to a more harmonious result. So I'm trying here to really connect as much as possible. So now I'm warming it up a little as I come closer to us. I add a bit of burnt sienna. It's a bit strong, but that's okay. Sometimes it happens. And I think I can cover up the sidewalk as well. So I'm just covering it up now. And you see how this burnt sienna really adds a lot of interest to the wash, so it's not that boring anymore. Now I'm combining it even with the back windshield, not windshield, you know, the back part of the car, because it's darker as well. I just need to make sure I don't hit any of the areas I want to leave as highlights. So I'm just putting in the details that are darker, very carefully, preserving the highlights where I need them to be. Because they will be important in the shape of the car. The car turned out really not that loose in this one, I have to say. Now I can kind of understand why people say it's not that loose, because it's there are a lot of details here. Loose can be much looser than this, but for me, compared to the other things I do, it's fairly loose. So anyway, yeah, now I'm doing the same thing for the car on the left. It's a little lighter, I think, but I'm just going over the really dark areas, leaving in the rest. And this concludes basically this part of the wash. Now I have the building on the left that I want to get in there. Now I want to get it perfect on the first shot. So I mixed a very dark mixture of some French ultramarine and burnt sienna. And I'm really just going crazy with it, just to keep it loose. I forced myself to keep it not too detailed. The burnt sienna helps here because it's really in the foreground, so it helps warm up the wash a little bit, maybe give the impression that it's a little closer to us, which really helps, I think. And the challenge here when doing these kinds of washes that are very dry is to keep them even. So you have to work really fast. So you see me working much faster than earlier on. If the bottom of the wash is wet and it's beading and everything, then you're okay. But with this kind of washes, they dry up really fast. Sometimes you may want to get out the mister and sort of spray them from a bit of a distance just to keep them a little alive. I didn't do that here, but I did it actually recently in some of my paintings. Now the top part is still something I want to do some wet in, and so hopefully it's not dry. I should have probably put a spritz of the mister, but you can see it's still fairly wet, so the color blends in. Now when you do wet in wet, you want the wash that you put into the wet to be a little more thick. Well, okay, it's not really even a wash, it's just almost pure paint that I'm putting in right now. The wetness of the brush should be less than on paper, because if it's more, you'll get these weird blossoms that nobody likes, except for some people that know how to use them to actually get effects that they want, which is amazing in and of itself. I'm not one of them. So now I'm going back with a damp brush, because I want to lift some of the paint. The reason why, I'm not sure. I just saw this effect in many other paintings, and I thought I'd try to recreate it. It did feel like the building was a little too dark, so I said it's a good opportunity to test that little technique and also lighten it up a little. So yeah, this is what ended up happening, and this is basically it for the building on the left. Now I'm using a very similar mixture that I used earlier for this wash, for the roofs and everything, because just the fact that we're glazing it over the previous wash is enough to make it darker. Okay. So it's a very similar wash. It's not necessarily that darker. I probably should switch now to a larger brush. I'm not sure if I do that, but I think it would be a good idea, because these areas are a little smaller, but not small enough, I guess. You can now take a look at the reference photo. So now I have to be a little more careful, because I'm not covering everything up with this wash. I'm actually leaving some parts as highlights. That will make it pop and look much better. So this is really the best way to convey depth, or not depth, three-dimensionality. You'll see now I warm it up with some more burnt sienna, and I negative paint around that window. Not around all of it. Some of it will be in the shadow. but I do want to leave this slice of window to the right, making it look as if light hits it. So you will see now what I do. You see I leave this small part of the window that's facing the right, actually, because it is more well lit, and I leave this little highlight in there, maybe for the inner frame of the window panes or something like this. I don't know, for the left part of it. At this point, I'm not following the reference as closely. I'm using it to get some inspiration on where to put the lights and shadows. I do use it to get some inspiration, but for the most part, I'm by my own right now. On my own, sorry. So yeah, going in down with the wash, trying to continue as quickly as possible, just to make sure the wash doesn't dry. But again, it's a little more wet than the wash on the left, so we're less at a risk of it drying on us. Now in terms of this window, I don't know, I just covered it all up. I didn't see too many highlights there, so I probably decided not to do them. Now I'm connecting this wash with some shadows on the right part, because again, you want to connect as many parts as possible while putting awareness on that left part, making sure it's not drying while you work on the right part. So really it's just a matter of being aware of everything that's happening. So now you see, because the initial wash was fragmented at this point, the dark wash on top really helps. The shadows here help to break it in a more graceful way. Okay, so it was a good place to split that initial wash. Granted, with more skills, maybe more of a tilted paper and a wetter wash, I could probably do all of the buildings in one go and not split them. But yeah, still struggle with that sometimes. So now I'm using my rigger brush with a dark mixture of burnt sienna and French ultramarine, just to get in some of the architectural details. Now the logic behind this is to get those details in while the wash is still wet, because things that are in the shadow are less sharp, and I want to recreate that effect. So when I put these details into a wash that's a bit wet, what happens is that they sort of blend in there and create this effect that I'm interested in. Okay, so this is a really good way, one way to go at it. I really hope this allergy improves soon, because it's hard to record videos like this. Yeah, this narration is easy, but recording facing the camera, I don't know, it's gonna be hard. But anyway, yeah, you'll just have to excuse me if I blow my nose a lot. So anyway, now I'm putting in those little last few details, and it's time to probably move into the wall on the right. This is where there's a lot of strong contrasts and a lot of cool effects that I want to get. So just mixing a wash that's fairly dark but not too dark. I don't want it to be as dark as the wash I used on the building on the left, so I still want it to flow a bit. So I'm just going here, slightly looking at the reference from time to time, just to figure out where the shadows should be, but then again, as I said, I'm not following the shape of them as accurately as in the reference. These small details will really help bring up the shapes of the buildings and all of that. So, and for this wall on the right, you want to really bring out the contrast between the shadows and the lights. This is important, just to get it to look differently from the wall on the left. That's a little more dim. There's a little less contrast. It's a little more blended together. So yeah, that's important. You want to make sure you do that properly. Putting in those windows that I didn't even mark with a pencil earlier. I just kind of put them in there. And I end this large one where the foliage ends. And the foliage is going to be, the bushes are going to be much darker anyway. So yeah, now just moving on from roof to roof to roof. This one is, just to vary it a little, I added a little more burnt sienna. I'm not even sure, maybe it was just a mistake, because it doesn't make sense to put more burnt sienna there. It's a little farther, a little taller. I should have probably used the bluer mixture for it. But yeah, maybe it just helps separate it from the building on the left really show that it's a separate part that's a little different. So it's still okay. You can see these small decisions you have to make throughout. You don't really have to get all of them right, you know. Some of them you can get wrong and you're still good. I didn't want to call it mistakes because it's not mistakes, it's just a matter of choices and decisions. And there's a lot of decision making when painting. Decision making is a big part of the process, actually. You have a lot of decisions to face. And one of the things I was really struggling with in the beginning is, and now I struggle less with it, doesn't mean I get the exact result I want, but I struggle less with it, is knowing the work process of, should I cover it all up with a wash? Should I cover some parts? What parts exactly? So these are all things that are very challenging, and I hope these full processes give you an idea. Because right now I made a decision not to cover everything with the sky. So I stopped them in the building, at the building. Some people don't do that, and it will get a different effect, you know. Sometimes I may cover everything with the sky. Maybe I should have used the sky and merge it with a wash for the street, and then I wouldn't have to struggle so much with the wash of the buildings, you know. So these are all questions, and it's worth trying out a few approaches. If you're patient, I would even try a few approaches with the same scene. I definitely don't do that enough right now, because the moment I finish with the scene, I'm like, that's it, can't see it anymore, bye-bye. So, but I should probably try it. Maybe even with this one. Try to have the washes a little differently and the work order a little different, and see what happens, you know. That's how you learn, from seeing the different results. So maybe it's worth revisiting this scene. By the way, I didn't even mention it. The picture, the image is, it's from a video, actually. I published a video of me painting outside with Julian back in Paris, and there's the part in the beginning where I show this sort of street scene. So all I did was take a screenshot of that part and use it here. So yeah, I will try to upload the image somewhere. I'm not really sure. Maybe there's quite a few services, and I will do my best to add a link to it, because for the most part I just use images that are already up there on the internet, but this one I need to upload somewhere, so I don't think it really matters. I'll just upload it to some image hosting service, and or maybe even to one of my websites, and give you a direct link to it so you can get it, hopefully. But anyway, you know, I'm moving on with the wash. You see I darkened the wall on the left of that building as well a little more. The small windows, two small structures plus windows, I know there's a professional name for it, there's no way I know it, but you really see how the highlight on their small tiny roofs really brings out their shape. These are all important stuff. Now this weird part on the right, I couldn't really understand what's going on in there, and it's in the peripherals of the reference, so I decided not to put too many details in there. Just to keep it kind of blended in there at the sides, just like the building on the left. Okay, so hopefully it gets the desired effect, what I wanted. And these windows are just put them in there, starting to add some more shadows to the parts of the wash that already dried. To the right of the windows, because light comes from the right, and so the right part of them is in the shadow, actually. I think I will make a video on light and shadow. I'm going to write a note for myself, light and shadow. Maybe something that will better explain the whole concept, and maybe even in a more advanced way, because there's a lot of tutorials out there that cover the basics. So maybe I can take like a small part of this scene and really analyze it and explain why the light behaves the way it does. I even write myself a note for that, explain based on painting, not necessarily a new demo. So it could be interesting to see. Anyway, yeah, now I'm putting in those small details on the roof, and you can see how they really make it pop and look, I think, look really good. I really like the use of yellow or quinacridone burnt orange in here, and this really just is a perfect example of how colors dry much lighter and sometimes a little more faded than you would expect. Because if you remember, when I put that quinacridone burnt orange, it looked so strong, and now look at it, it's like barely there, you know. So now for this mixture, I'm using undersea green and sap green together. Not sure why I did that, but it just felt right to use sap green here as well. So I'm starting here from the left, just starting to paint those little bushes here, low hanging. There is a fence around them, as there usually is around these types of buildings. But I didn't get it in, and I'm happy I didn't. I considered doing it, and then I thought to myself, it's too much detail for this type of scene. I don't really need it. So I just didn't put it in there at all. I think it was a solid move on my end. I think it was a good decision. Yeah. So now the tree here on the right, and you can see I'm negative painting around that traffic light. Just because I want it to be black right there. I could probably cover it up. Don't know. Again, different approaches. It may be a correct one, it may be an incorrect one. I think it's important to play around with them. I definitely won't say that I have the answer for that, or at least not one conclusive answer. I think you should play around with it. So now if you look at the reference, the street is a little darker than the sidewalk, so I just go ahead and start from the street itself and leave the sidewalk as light as it is at the moment, okay? And I'm kind of leaving some highlights for the people. I'm basically copying what I saw other artists that I like do, which is a mistake because I don't do it because I think I should. So this is something I want to work on. It's like, as I mentioned earlier, there's this sort of a weird disconnect when I'm combining figures and landscapes sometimes. I mean, in painting. In drawing, I don't have that problem. When I'm sketching, I don't have that problem. Only with watercolor, with painting, there's something weird psychologically going there. Maybe I'm just imitating some other people. So I think I should treat it a little differently from now. Because really, when I'm just sketching a scene, the people fit in there perfectly. But with the watercolor, it's somehow I believe I need to do something different, and maybe I don't, you know? So this is something worth thinking about. So this is basically done for the street. The one thing I will add later on is some detail on the side of the sidewalk. There's a bit of, on the edge of the sidewalk, there's a bit of a shadow, but this will come later on. So for now, I'm putting in the details of the car, just following the reference, trying to figure out where the light is, where the shadows are. This with the tail light is going to be really good with the white there. I like to convey these kinds of shapes. Cars, things like this, it's really fun. I'm not doing enough of those actually, just because I have such a desire to master landscapes and cityscapes and maybe even seascapes. I kind of neglect just painting single objects, which is, to be fair, a lot easier for me. I think I could make a few really good demos with it, but maybe I will make one. Maybe a car or another still life, which I haven't done in a while. Could be an interesting result. I really like my recent still lifes, and I get good feedback on them, and it's so funny to me because it's much simpler than a landscape. When you're doing a landscape, there's so many, or full scene for that matter, there's so many different variables to take into consideration. And with still life, you just have this arrangement on the table, or you have even just one single fruit or vegetable or whatever it is, and it just makes things so much easier. So anyway, now I'm putting in the shadows for that building on the back. Now my instincts tell me this is not the right value, so I'm remixing it a bit. Probably darkening it a bit. I'm not sure, sometimes you get this weird extra sense after a while of painting. The moment your brush touches the paper, you know, it's not right. So yeah, this is probably what happened here. Using my pinky there to get some balance, sometimes that's necessary. Especially if you have a wet wash in the middle that you don't want to put your hand over. I wanted to darken it just to create a better separation with the building to its left. to the left of this area I just covered, because it was fairly similar, and I didn't want it to be that way. So now again, the rigger brush, loading it up, and I want to get some more finer details in. Now with the rigger brush, you have to really load it up properly. Otherwise, because its capacity is so low, specifically the one I'm using, maybe, I don't know, it's not that the best one you can find. It's just the only one that I saw that actually delivers here to Israel. And I'm not that huge fan of, I mean, I don't need them this much, so I didn't even think about getting a new one in Paris. But yeah, it is a helpful tool in many cases, just to get some small details like I'm doing right now. I don't want to overdo it because it's really just an area that's more at the back. It doesn't need that much details. I could have probably left it the way it was earlier and not worry about it at all. Probably should have cut that part out of the video, just super slow in this part. But yeah, it makes sense. The more you progress into the painting, the more you actually need to observe the current situation and make more accurate decisions. Okay, the more you move to the end of the painting, sometimes you can have a stronger effect on the painting itself. So you have to be a little careful. So now moving on to the left here, just like I did with the block of buildings on the right, just trying to shade all the area on the left. I think I came to the conclusion it was a little darker, so all the thing I did right now was to lighten it up a little. Trying to get this as accurately as possible. I talked about it a few times with rough paper or cold pressed paper. Sometimes it's harder to get the accuracy you want. Because of the paper's texture, it sometimes breaks off your lines, so I really have to be a little more careful here. When this is probably a good thing for loose paintings, but yeah, it's not as loose as it can be, so maybe if it was looser it could have helped me a little more, where the accuracy of the lines doesn't really, of the washes rather, isn't as important. So now I'm trying to quickly finish this left part because I want to connect some parts of the right wall, on the right of the wash, to the front facing wall, the one that faces the light. It's funny because I can already read my mind and know what I'm trying to do, because I'm just thinking what I would be doing at this very moment if I would paint this. I'm sure a lot of you have this. Sometimes when I'm seeing demos by other people, I'm thinking I would now do this or now do that. So anyway, all of those details, I'm trying to connect them to that previous switch. So I wanted to do it before it dries. That's the thing here, especially this line that connects to the window on the roof. This was an important one. Now I'm working my way to the top of the window, trying to merge it as much as possible with that line on the left, adding some architectural details. But now you gotta be careful because you don't want to put too many details in this building. It's more at the back. Less significant for the scene. So you see I'm using lower contrasts, not as dark as I used on the building on the right. This is really important to resist the temptation to add more details. A lot of the times I see other artists say that you can go on forever adding more and more details. I don't find that's necessarily the case for me. I really don't relate with this statement actually. A lot of them say you have to know when to stop. Well, I do agree with that, but for me at least, it's kind of obvious when to stop because I just don't know what to add anymore. So it could be that when I improve, I'll have more of their problems. So really, I don't know. Not sure at all. But anyway, yeah, this probably wraps up most of the building action here. Maybe a little more darker details on top of that existing wash or on the shadow, which I'm doing right now. Just putting some burnt sienna. I'm gonna add some blue. I want to make it not too warm because it is more in the distance. So hopefully I didn't make the mistake of making it too warm. It looks a bit warm, but I hope that's just the camera. So yeah, just putting in those lines. The windows really just light statement, light hint of the windows. Probably should have been more careful with those horizontal lines. Diagonal horizontal, should have not put them in maybe at all, or maybe just a little less of them. But anyway, these are the kinds of things you only see in retrospect and in hindsight. You don't really think about. There's a lot of things you don't think about while you paint for the first time, and then they just sort of come to you afterwards. This is why I think it's so important not to be too hard on yourself, because if you got the results that you got, by definition, you probably couldn't have done a better job. So it's just what happens, you know. If you could have done a better job, you would have. You know, that's what I believe. If you were focused when you worked on it and you didn't do a million other things while painting, which honestly I don't know how that's even possible, then you're good, you know. You're gonna notice things that you didn't before, and that's okay. So now moving into the darker details of the cars, just to help bring some of them out. There's gonna be the windows, the front, the windshields, the shadows under the cars also. Some of the headlights, I guess, all of those details. Thinking about it again, I should probably have also put some people on the sidewalk on the right side, but across the street, not where I put them next to the traffic light. It could have been a really good idea, actually. So yeah, again, more things that you notice only after you're done with the painting, you know, there's no escaping it. So together with this part of adding the details to the cars, I'll also add probably the shadows to the edges of the sidewalks. For the shadows, I just use again blue and burnt sienna to make this sort of a grayed out blue or grayed out orange or sort of sienna, depending on the situation and where the object is. And this is really just the finishing touches, basically. You know, most of the details are in there. Even if I'd stop now, it would look okay. Even though, you know, the car in the very foreground isn't finished, that's for sure. But just really, the weight of attention should be given really to the large shapes and the large areas, because they really dictate the composition here. But that being said, the car on the foreground is really huge, so it's probably more important than I say now. Yeah, so now I'm just trying to figure out what's the next thing I want to darken. Probably the car in the center, or maybe not. Just to add some more details to the windows here. If I just feel like the contrast isn't strong enough in some places, I may add a little more details. This is really just improvisation. Didn't really think about it too much, and you see it did give the window some more depth. Maybe here as well on this window on the right, but really not too much thought here. It's just going with my instincts, and I will soon work on the car and the shadows of the, again, sidewalks. Just trying to figure out, while I have this dark wash, if any other areas need that dark treatment. Because sometimes it's comfortable to use the same color if you already have it and you need it in other places. By the way, Tio does that a lot. Tio from here on YouTube as well. Now finally the shadow on the sidewalk. So he does that a lot when he paints scenes. So what he'll do, he'll paint everything that needs to be, like for example this skin tone. So he'll paint everything in sort of a pink, orange, brown color. Then he'll move on to all of the blues. Then he'll move on to all of the reds. And it's just a very economic way of doing it. You waste less paint, you work faster, so yeah. With me, I'm not exactly working like that for the most part, because I do want to achieve a smoother look. But yeah, it's definitely a possible way. So now I'm going over the people. The person on the right, I really gave a lot of thought to, because it's also based on the person on the reference, which will be a little hard to see in the small thumbnail sort of that I show you here, but if you go to the original one, you'll see this. So anyway, the person on the right is based on that. The person on the left is based on just my imagination, so I won't be surprised if it turns out a little less graceful than yeah, this one. But it's really hard getting this right sometimes. So again, as a part of a painting, I tend to lose it a bit. Unlike if I would just sketch them. So yeah, So now I'm mixing this very dark mixture just for the jeans, probably. Trying to put them in there really fast, not too detailed. Sometimes I end up making them a little too detailed, but that's okay. I think he's having his hand in his sweater pocket or something like this. But you can just sort of assume or guess what he's doing because it's really just an impression. Yeah, I don't know why I left those highlights in. It's not clear. Maybe what I think I'll do is maybe practice painting figures the Alvaro Castanet way. He has a very distinct way of doing them. I don't think this is how I will do them because these things always are like you imitate someone else, it doesn't work for you, but there's a reason to imitate them because you just get it as another option and it makes you better understand your way of doing things. This is something I thought about I think I started thinking about it just yesterday, but it's been a while since I just followed some tutorials. For the most part, I've just been painting by myself. And it's good because, and this is a topic for another video of inspiration and isolation that I want to make soon. When you spend a lot of time in isolation, it's great because you develop your own style, but then sometimes you need some time of inspiration. Just to bring in some influence from other people. And I think this is what I need right now, maybe for the next week or so, to just follow some tutorials, look at some other people painting, people I really look up to, and just try to understand what they're doing, try to imitate what they're doing, and then come back with this knowledge and again go into another isolation period where I just work on my own skills, my own paintings, my own so this is a good combination, and I think I'm on the verge of making that change. I feel like I've been doing really a lot of things on my own, which is great again, but now I think it's time to get some outer influence and some inspiration. Because really, what it gives you is it breaks your boundaries. You may develop these, I don't even want to call it limiting beliefs, but just thoughts about how things can be done. And then you see someone else achieve the same effect or maybe something similar using a very different and simpler method. And then it just makes things easier. So, so this is something I want to try out with just the book witches and the Castanets, maybe some others. I actually saw a few interesting artists in one of the museums I went to in Paris, not the Louvre, it was another one. And so I just saw so many landscapes and beautiful paintings. Some of them were in oil, but still had that loose feeling that I like. And so I want to try and maybe even imitate their style, sort of try to mimic it. So it's just a good time to find some inspiration. So now I'm just working on the cars. Again, the details, you can really see how it makes them pop. The car in the center definitely looks more like a car right now. Again, the composition is really bad. Probably should have moved both of them a little to the right. But anyway, yeah, now I'm mixing a very, very dark wash. It's the burnt sienna and French ultramarine again. I'm not using black at all with this one because it just never turns out the way I want to. It looks a little dead. Too perfect, rather. So the French ultramarine and burnt sienna, really strong wash. Maybe I added some sepia in there, though I'm not sure. Just to get that traffic light because it's really in the front. So I wanted to get it using as dark lines as possible to make a distinction from the from all the rest of the shape. So I'm getting it in there, loading up the brush as much as necessary. Oh, by the way, yeah, I made this black using all primaries. So there's the French ultramarine, there's a bit of new gamboge there, as you saw, and probably a bit of magenta too. Either magenta or burnt sienna, not sure. But it doesn't really matter this much. I used both of them in this painting, so both should work. But anyway, yeah, this is really close to the finish now. Just add that part that's more in the light, on the right of all the planes of the traffic light that turn to the right, that face the right, and then just adding some sap green for the light itself. This is pretty much pure sap green. I wasn't sure which one I should use because it has this sort of very cool feeling to it, but I just ended up using sap green. It's what I had the most available. Maybe a Viridian would have worked better. I don't know what's going on here. Probably should have cut that part out. But anyway, now I'm going to mix again another strong mixture, because what I want to do now is go over the traffic light again, make it a little darker. Okay, it doesn't feel dark enough for me, especially because you can see through it some of the underwashes. So yeah, but it's good. It happens from time to time. So I'm just adding in. It's a good chance to add some details. In the bottom, you see some kind of a shape for it next to where the people are, or you can interpret it as another person, really. And this is it now. I'm just signing it. And assigning it on the car, which kind of made it look like a police car, I have to admit. So that was funny. I found it really funny. It looks like a police car if you look at it in your peripheral view. But anyway, yeah, this is done, and here's the final result. So this is it, friends. I hope you enjoyed seeing this process. I hope you liked the drawing part and the painting part. Really enjoyed making this one, and it feels like a major step up for me. I constantly experience, like, I feel like I'm getting better, then a little losing some of my ability for a while, then rebuilding it, then losing it again. Overall, I can really feel a very slow, yet steady progress, and this is the most important thing. Every painting, sometimes there's ups, sometimes there's downs, but the overall trend is definitely up with time. Slow and steady wins the race, like they say. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this one. Don't forget to subscribe here on YouTube, and also follow me, a piece of apple. Also follow me on Snapchat and Instagram for more personal updates and works in progress. And I will see you again in another video tomorrow.